Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Yobani Ramos Wash Processed Colombia from Morgon Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. And Morgon, based out of Gothenburg in Sweden. I believe that's how you pronounce it in English, and I believe there's a different pronunciation in Swedish, as I had a Swedish friend pronounce the name of that city to me once before, and Swedish is a very difficult language as experienced through the Advent calendar, so not even going to try to replicate the Swedish pronunciation of that name. But yeah, they're a coffee roaster based out of Sweden, and they were a suggestion to us by Daniel Wiseman. So shout out to and a thank you to Daniel for the suggestion. And this is not our first time actually trying Morgon, as back in December we reviewed and recorded an entire bag of one of their wash processed Kenyas, but decided to scrap the video for two reasons. The first of which being our Advent calendar had arrived, and we wanted to spend the entire month of December focusing specifically on the Advent calendar. And the second reason being, as mentioned, it was a wash-processed Kenya, and often we feel like we don't do the best job reviewing wash-processed Kenyas, as they're not our favorite coffees. If they're very red fruit forward, then we feel like we don't have a lot of great input into describing and analyzing the coffee overall. So for those two reasons, we just scrapped the video altogether and said in the future, we will try another Morgon coffee, and weirdly enough, it's kind of easy to get Morgon around the area, so when we saw this bag of coffee, we knew it was a great opportunity. They had two others, another wash processed Kenya, so obviously we decided to skip that one. And there was a wash processed Ethiopia, which they also had on pour overs. So we tried that in store and knew that we should probably go with the Colombia, so that way we would have at least 3 Morgon coffees that we could base our experiences off of. So decided to go with this Colombia. This right here is day 20 of this Colombia. And Morgon didn't have a recipe on their website, so the recipe we decided to go with was based off some information we saw from the Coffee Vine, as a couple of other people had tried their coffee, and the recipe we came up with was a 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio at 205 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, they were doing 93 degrees Celsius, which I believe translates to about 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a lot lower than we had expected. Played around a little with the temperature, but still liked kind of in the middle, a little better. So 205 is what we went with through the Chemex, and this is a light Nordic for the roast profile. With that out of the way, let's start discussing the coffee itself. And day 10, very red fruit forward, very acidic, very Kenyan-like coffee, and we were actually kind of a little surprised at how Kenyan-like this coffee was. Now, the descriptors for this coffee is, I believe, red currants and structured. Not a whole lot of descriptors on the bag, but we were kind of curious. I mean, this is a Colombia, so we expected maybe something a little different, but it was very, very Kenyan from the start. Day 11, and we notice a lot of the time that there might be some huge differences from the first time you try it to the second time you try it, and that was definitely the case in this one. As there was less of the overbearing acidic red fruits, it had died down to a much more fruity sweetness, and that was quite nice. So we kind of thought, okay, maybe this coffee will skew a little bit more towards the sweets than the kind of acidic red fruits. But truth be told, it went back and forth a lot of the time, and even though we weren't playing around with the recipe too much, that's kind of our experience with this specific coffee. Day 13, the coffee was improving though. We were experiencing some slight florals as well to complement this very distinct red fruit. Day 14, coffee at this point was not quite as good as it had been on the days before, as we were getting a lot more Kenyan characteristics, even some slight vegetal components in the coffee as well. So as mentioned before, Kenyans, especially the red fruit Kenyans, are definitely not our favorites, so the coffee was kind of going backwards for us at this point. Day 16, still pretty red cup of coffee, getting progressively more red too, as we were getting some very deep cranberries and deep earthiness. We will be very upfront and say don't eat a lot of red currants, so honestly don't know what red currants taste like for the most part. Had red currant flavored stuff, I mean that's pretty common, but heard red currants are basically a bit more of a tart berry, and as a result, yeah, I could definitely see the red currant, but we're getting cranberries, probably the best descriptor we have for it. A lot more familiar with cranberries. And then day 17, most notes we have last day, also the day we made the tasting wheel, say the coffee is progressively getting more tomato-like. It's getting more and more Kenyan-like, that kind of traditional stereotype that you know Kenyan coffee can be. Acidic flavor profile to the body as well. There were some really nice parts buried underneath, and that's what we want to emphasize, is maybe if we would have tweaked this coffee and worked with this coffee a little bit more. We were kind of worried if we did, we might like the coffee a little less, but there were definitely some really nice hidden components, and we don't want that part of this coffee to go kind of undiscussed in this, as we did get some very slight fleshy fruits that were very, very nice, and it was lingering underneath, and probably with some more work we could have gotten more of those out of this coffee. some nice sweetness that's really, really hidden in this cup, but for the most part, it is very much dominated by these common, stereotypical Kenyan fruit characteristics. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. Then I feel like this can look very similar to a lot of Kenyan tasting wheels. Day 20, this coffee, again, it's tasting very, very tomato-like. It's tasting very, very red fruit, coffee-like, and it is what it is, honestly. We should have, looking at the descriptors of this coffee, known that there was very much a possibility, and we did know that, but we didn't really want to review the Chilbesa, as trying the Chilbesa in store wasn't necessarily our favorite, and we definitely did not want to review a Kenyan, even if this coffee did end up being very much like a Kenyan. So yeah, looking at this tasting wheel, of course, the berry fruit's pretty high, acidity pretty high, has a very nice lasting finish. Sweetness at level 3, because as mentioned, there's some really underrated and nice sweetness in this cup of coffee, and we don't want that to go undiscussed. Savoriness, yeah, it's got that tomato. It's a level 4. Medium-bodied cup, not the cleanest. A little bit of, as mentioned, the florals are underrated in this coffee. They're quite nice. Level 1 on the spice, level 2 on the spice correction, because it does have, as mentioned, that kind of earthiness to this cup of coffee. But yeah, for the most part, its tasting wheel looks pretty good, especially for how it is on day 20. I think it looks pretty accurate of what we were getting from this coffee. All right, so our overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee, as well as Morgon. So it has not been the best experience we've had with Morgon, and mostly because a lot of the coffees that they have released have just not been our flavor profile. We mentioned over and over that these stereotypical Kenyans are not our flavor profile, so having a Colombian that tastes like a Kenyan is not going to be the biggest winner for us. But objectively speaking, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this cup of coffee. If you love Kenyans, then this is a great fit for you, but it's just overly dominated by those red fruit characteristics, which is never going to be our favorite thing. Type of person we would suggest this coffee to, I mean, obviously, having harped on this throughout the entire review, people that do love their Kenyans, if somebody is looking for a Colombian that tastes like a Kenyan, this is a great fit for you. If you do love those red fruits, if you do love that even tomato-y characteristic, then this is a great cup of coffee for you. We know that a lot of people feel the urge and need to get one of those cups of coffee from time to time, so this seems like a really good fit for you. And again, objectively speaking, we've never experienced anything wrong with Morgon. All 3 of the coffees we've experienced from them have just not been our flavor profile. Even with all that being said, we're still kind of determined to try something that may lend itself to being something we're a little bit more interested in, and we'll go back and try some more Morgon in the future, and hopefully find something that we really, really like, because truth be told, we can see that there is probably quite a bit of greatness from this coffee roaster, just have had some bad luck with it up until this point. But we feel we're just going to leave it at that for this coffee. If you have tried this Yobani Ramos, we would love to know your thoughts and opinions of it as well, especially if you've had any of Morgon's coffees. We'd love to know your thoughts and opinions of them as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a review of the Yobani Ramos Wash Processed Colombia from Morgon Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.